Miles Johnston is back with us today. I am delighted to welcome you back, Miles. I've had so many requests for another interview with Miles Johnston. Welcome.
Well, Veronica, you caught me in what we call hot edit mode. I'm in edit lockdown because I'm editing a very important interview on the Sasquatch.
How interesting.
The thing about the Sasquatch is there's just a big bunch of hairy ape-type things running around the country that some people have faked and things and whatever it is, with that so-called famous footage allegedly faked.
Yes.
We are getting a little bit of scamming on who's faked what when it isn't.
Yeah.
I've also done a very important interview with our mutual friend, John Irwin.
Yes.
Who is ex-military, 1959, special mission, got some stuff to keep it from the Illuminati,
yes.
Which is means that the British military had secret forces running around fighting the Illuminati in the 1950s.
Mm-hmm.
That's all very important because it means that the likes of David Icke and Anthony J. Hilda and the Jordan Maxwells of this world and various other people aren't quite the lunatics that maybe some people would wish them to be known as.
I know.
So when you've got British military people who were involved with missions talking about our original proto-human bodies, this is my term, Irwin's data basically is that we're all ETs. And the first ETs that somebody brought us here,
yes.
He's saying it's the Archons who brought us here, and he's equating Archon and Grey.
Really?
And our ancestors made them. And what is happening now has happened before.
Mm-hmm.
To use a quote from Battlestar Galactica, this has all happened before and will happen again.
Yes.
Our problem is to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes that happened before, that resulted in so much catastrophe.
Yes.
The question is, who brought us here and why? The threat is that there is a fifth race amongst us, which
yes.
is non-human, but crucially, they require human bodies to exist in this reality which we're living in now,
yes.
Which means the aliens look like us.
That's right.
But then we're the aliens.
Yes.
We are not indigenous to this world,
mm-hmm.
But there are indigenous species in this world. Some known as the jinn, which are not happy with what's going on, with what we are doing now.
Yes.
And when I say what we are doing is that we are all guilty by lack of action. That's to say, a secret elite of non-humans, which are molesting, killing and maiming our children and corralling us.
Yes.
Are doing so because we're letting them do it. We're letting them get away with it.
Yes.
So our compliance is our lack of action, giving our permissions away.
That's right.
So what we must do is A, wake up, and B, not let them get away with it.
Yes.
And make sure that they know that they're not going to get away with it.
Correct.
But one of the things which has come my way in the 20th year of the Basis Project, and I've decided to hold a conference in Marlborough in the middle of the summer,
Wonderful.
2014.
Yes.
And what's happened is that some of the people I've interviewed have sent me some material. And we'll get this out of the way. And this is, the point is that in order for us not to be able to action waking up, in order to make us not be able to stop what this elite is doing,
yes,
is that they now are enabling technologies to track every thought and every
yes.
feeling and thought that we have
mm-hmm.
in our thinking,
yes,
so that they can identify who's the problem and try to stop it.
Yes.
Now, a lot of this stuff is so science fiction that really, it's not really happening, and Veronica and the likes of yourself and me really just, you can have your little nutcase conspiracy theories, but nothing's really happening, and just by basically quietly move along and don't cause too much noise, right?
Yes.
Now, some of the noise is from the US Navy Special Warfare Operations disclosure on classified operations, technologies and applications being used against Americans and us. Mind control, time travel, timeline alterations, soul theft, plundering the heavens, spiritual realms, genocide of the human species. Now, there were 2 versions of this released, and they were sent to me specifically. One was on mid-December last year, and this version is basically an addition to that, which was released on the 1st of January, the 13th of January 2014. And I mentioned it in my updates, but this is 20 pages worth of stuff.
Yes.
The basic thing is any of this really happening? Is it really real? Well, ask Marie Kayali that. She had her daughter bumped off by elements which programmed her. The way I've said that is if she said it. No, her daughter was gang stalked and murdered.
Yes.
And she's one of the bravest people I've ever known. She's a brilliant woman, and she's a vestige from the now basically defunct Amash project.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that she's now made formal complaints to police, and her daughter was pursued, corralled, and assassinated. That's the basic premise of her complaint with the police.
Yes.
So this is a real thing. People are being killed off, and having just returned from the UFO Congress, the International UFO Congress, I was able to speak with Steve Bassett, and he's now concerned now that the senior UFO, or not senior, but certain people who are researching this subject are now being bumped off, actively pursued and taken out.
Yes.
In fact, when I spoke at the Super Soldier Summit in near Las Vegas, in Henderson, beside Las Vegas, last year, one of the participants in that conference has been bumped off. So there's now some concern, and there's also the Stan Romanek issue where he's now in jail, and he's been beaten up pretty badly in jail under certain charges involving images on his computers.
Yes.
Now, we don't know how they got there or whether he's compliant or not. He is innocent until proven guilty, but the point is this is potentially an ongoing pattern where people are being taken out. So what I'm talking about here is this is not a joke. This is no drill.
No, it isn't. I know.
It's happening to real people with real consequences. People are dying.
Yes.
And a year ago, we had the Confessions of an Alien Abductee program, which was probably the most important program made on British television in many, many years, which ridiculed but highlighted the alien abduction situation.
Yes.
And again, with Marie Kayali, we had evidence of devices in people.
Yes.
Signals, devices being placed into you, nanotechnology.
Oh, yes.
In the back of the head.
That's right.
Implants, things which radiate actual signals you can actually pick up with a meter.
I know that. Yes.
Again, this is stuff that you can actually prove. You can go up to somebody with a meter. It indicates that a radio signal is coming from something hidden within people.
That's right.
Right? There is a range of technologies being abused about this, and there's the ICACT organisation, ICAACT, about the abuse of covert technology, which is making this whole thing public.
Yes.
I've been speaking to certain people in Europe who are lobbying in the European Parliament to have legislation about this abuse of covert technology.
Yes.
And so we have to stand up and demand that this is wrong, not give our permissions away by allowing all this sort of stuff to happen. We've got to get active within the law, within the community, hold small meetings, discussing groups, writing letters perhaps instead of emails.
Yes.
It's probably a bit of an outlandish thing.
Yes.
I've caught British Telecom red-handed bugging my intranet because they told me.
Yes.
And they were able to take off my internet because I was moving a house into Wiltshire. And strangely, they chose each date with these house moves. Anybody outside the UK or England specifically won't really understand how atrociously disastrous the English system for moving houses, and there's all sorts of gazumping and sorts of things going on.
Yes.
So you can get many false dates. I had about 3 false dates when I wasn't actually going to move, but only I knew that the next date was going to be the day I actually leave.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have a telephone anymore. I had to use the mobile.
Yes.
But strangely, British Telecom knew in advance when my moving dates were going to be, and they, just by coincidence, chose those dates to reinstall my internet. Now, as it happened, this went on for over 10 days, almost a fortnight, almost 2 weeks, where I should have had the internet. This is a very important time. You need to communicate with everybody, and all sorts of things have to happen. But they just happened to choose those dates when I would actually be leaving the house, when they were going to come in and reinstall everything.
Yes.
And I caught them red-handed 3 times. How did they know that each date that they chose just happened to be the date that I was leaving? And thanks to British Telecom, they told me I was on a secret folder that most people wouldn't actually see in British Telecom. So for the vast majority of people doing their work at BT, they were perfectly happy. They were just finding, it's a fault, we'll get it fixed.
Yes.
But it was in a secret folder, so they were deliberately caught. They've been caught bugging. So if BT want to give me the relevant legislation that they were operating under to do all that, I'll be quite happy. I won't be very happy, but at least I'll know that they've been working within the law.
Yes.
And it appears they're not working within the law. So this is about the abuse of covert technology. So even though that they were not actually accessing my account because they'd cut me off, they still were bugging and still retrieving information from some source or other, through some network or other, which allowed them to know when I was going to be moving house. And basically they weren't going to reconnect anything because, he's moving house. Heck him, we'll not do it anyway, but we'll tell him we're going to do it. But that revealed that they had access to that information, which means they were bugging. This is real. They were...
Oh, I know it's real.
So we're not talking about fairy tales here.
No.
That's the point. So when we get a document, a 20-page document, when this is as important, in my opinion, as the Majestic 12 documents, which came out, I think, in the late 1980s, in 89, I think it was. Now, those documents, I think, have been proven to be a hoax, but the content, like a lot of disinformation releases, you've got to sort of mine through it. You don't get
a certain amount.
Yes, it's like getting raw ore out of the ground. It'll have gold or precious metals in there. You've got to look at things very carefully.
Quite.
So this 20-page document about mind control and the disclosure of against this term targeted individuals means that we have an attack strategy on the ordinary citizen by an elite who wish to track the kind of consciousness and thoughts that you're actually having, so that they can stop us from waking up and, God forbid, defend ourselves.
Yes.
Now, the thing about this is that the Sasquatch are telling us this as well.
How interesting.
Big, heavy set, hairy-bodied, big fellas, 15 feet, 12 feet tall, are telling us. And they're telling us John Irwin was informed about this kind of thing 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. I don't know when he was actually told about who the proto-human stage of humanity brought here by the archons at the time of the dinosaurs. So the sort of urban, white-skinned, pink-skinned type of humanoid beings were the first arrivals here. And the archon, or the Sasquatch, again, this is coming from not only John Irwin, it's coming from two other sources.
Yeah.
Sources who have spent time with the Sasquatch and communicated with them. These beings are saying that we, squat little 5 or 6 foot little weakling bodies like we have relative to what the Sasquatch and Bigfoot have, arrived here or were processed or developed here around about the time of the first Great Ice Age. So these guys, the Sasquatch, have been hunting dinosaurs. They've left their evidence in rock strata, big humanoid footprints, human type footprints with the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs ate them. They went after the dinosaurs. So they were developed in such a way that it would have to survive under the very harsh conditions of Mother Nature on a raw planet with the dinosaurs. Speeding forward to us, they have therefore seen us arrive and they have seen us go many times. Now the other problem here is that we have an indigenous original population here known as the Jinn. Very intelligent population which live in a completely different spatial dynamics as we live in.
Yes.
And they are in a stage where they basically want the planet back. We're the late arrivals here, including the other main primary races, the Indian tan-skinned types of beings, and the Chinese types of beings, and the Negroid types of beings. And the Negroid types of beings are in fact the last versions to arrive.
Yes.
And where they came from and who brought us here, again, the Archons or whatever, is very important. But it seems that this fifth arrival has deliberately chosen the white type of proto-humans, us, the so-called race that was developed from the Sasquatch, with some other types of ET genes put in there as well, who we actually ever derived from or who made us, we simply don't know at this stage. But they used that version of humanity to cover their tracks. So they have used that version of humanity to infiltrate globally and set up a system which will eventually, if we allow them to, wipe out all life on Earth.
Yes, I can quite believe that. But I've also been told that there are beings hidden in the Vatican. Are you aware of this?
Now, what kind of beings are you referring to? Big giants or?
The ones with the big heads.
The
elongated head.
The so-called conehead type.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, let's salute Lloyd Pye for his work. The late Lloyd Pye.
Yes.
And hopefully Lloyd Pye died of natural causes.
I do hope so.
And hopefully he wasn't one of those taken out because he was getting too close.
Yes.
I understand from a person who was asked to communicate with Lloyd literally the day before he left England, because as you know, there's a brilliant woman in Highgate called Belinda Mackenzie, who had financed a lot of his early work, and Lloyd had become a great friend and spent some time in Highgate with Belinda. Belinda's taking a few knocks these days.
I believe so.
But Lloyd was visited by a person who claims to have contact with other beings to offer healing. He chose not to do that, and Belinda took him to the airport in tears, and he got on the plane, and 2 weeks later he had passed away. Now Lloyd has since replied and suggested that his new partner is going to continue his work.
Yes.
And hope that she's sort of had the chalice put
Yes.
in her hands, and I hope that she's able to continue the work and show that the so-called Star Child skull is a non-terrestrially derived connected entity, an ET. But we are ETs, as I keep saying.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully that will work out, and hopefully we'll be able to develop that, and hopefully scientists will then begin to wake up or become less programmed. Because I think if you look at a lot of the scientists which are certainly pushed forward in this now dogmatic,
Yes.
elitist religion or dogma we now
Yes.
call science, which is something which Kiwani Lapseveritis, I've got to get that name out, he explained this in the interview, that modern science, the kind of people who are going into the ancient monuments, the ancient mounds, the standing stones,
Yes.
they are destroying things because of their ignorance,
Yes.
or they're maliciously doing so to make sure that the knowledge and information in these massive standing stones all across the planet, these energy systems, are being maliciously tampered with.
Yes.
And I know you've been doing a little bit of work on that.
Yes. We are going to do some concentrated meditation and visualization, and we will work with the obelisks in Rome. And by linking in with those obelisks, they are built in such a way they all connect around the world. And so when we work on the ones in Rome, we are actually working on all of them and releasing that energy. And we must visualize that energy, that beautiful white energy going up, up, up above the clouds and spreading out throughout the world, because they were placed on particular spots where the energy should be released to us, and it's being blocked from us. Now, we didn't understand about ley lines. I didn't. I'd heard of them, but after Monty died, he started explaining the importance of ley lines. And I thought, okay. But as he said, if the body, our vein system, if there's a problem, then we're ill. We can't function.
I mean, that's what acupuncture and energy balancing is about.
Exactly. So think about it as the world, as a sphere. The energy is being blocked from us. We need that energy to survive, and this is our survival. The importance of working with the obelisks. I cannot stipulate enough the importance of this. It is our passport to freedom, and it's our future. We have to take part in it.
This is where the stepping stones, the way that these obelisks, these stones,
yeah.
Silbury Hill, Stonehenges, these kind of things as well.
Yeah, they're all linked.
But whoever put them there
yeah.
had a hyperdimensional
exactly
knowledge.
They knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing.
And Monty said right from the beginning, the ancients had all the knowledge necessary.
Yes.
And that is what has been blocked from us.
Now that's what Kiwani has spoken to. He has spoken to a type of Sasquatch known as the ancients.
Yes.
They're known as ancients.
Yes.
They have human faces,
yes.
big heavy bodies with the hair, and they're able to jump or spontaneously go between 8 up to 8 dimensions.
Gosh.
But what's happening is that the kind of technology, and I've spoken to some grounded, sensible type electrical engineering type people, and they're measuring signals, not necessarily the big signal, the big signal would be a distraction.
Mm-hmm.
They're finding that there are polluting type electrical signals, energy signatures, which mimic or are very close to human thought or normal human or normal energy signatures which we'd have in the environment.
Yes.
And what the Sasquatch are saying is that they are now being prevented. They're having difficulty doing what they've been doing naturally for millions of years, or hundreds of thousands of years, depending on which timetable you want to use. So the enemy is setting up a grid system to shut us down, to imprison us from successfully waking up. And one of the people I'm having at my conference is going to be talking about these young children, these brilliant, wonderful children,
yes,
which are being stopped and
that's
blocked,
right,
with an utterly dull education system designed to bore them to tears.
Yes.
And this is a global problem.
I know it is, yeah.
But what I would like to ask you is, obviously, the Vatican has been around a while.
Oh my God. You know,
so how are you going to sort of say, nip in there in what way or other, which I'm sure you're not going to tell us, and sort of bypass all the work that they've been doing for the last 2,000 odd years?
Well, you know, when Monty first died, and he was explaining our problems on Earth, because he said, once you die, you look back and you see everything as it is, not as you thought it was. And he said, right from the beginning, the Vatican is the most evil place on Earth. It controls everything and everyone. And people just aren't aware of it. They're blinded to it. Because these people are preaching love and forgiveness.
There was a mild incentive, burnt at the stake, tortured relentlessly, were incentives to sort of...
I know. But I have been reading what they did in Croatia. And quite frankly, I knew they'd done a lot of terrible things. But I was horrified.
Are you talking about the recent war, 15 years ago?
Yeah. Look at Vietnam. But go back to our country, Miles. What we were told was a famine was, in fact, a Holocaust designed by the Jesuits, and they went over and they ensured that as many Irish people as possible died. And why, I know I've said this before, but I want to say it again, did Pope Adrian give Ireland and her people as slaves to the British Crown on condition that the Irish never find out who they are? What's that telling you?
Well, that's something which is close to my heart in terms of what we did in the 1970s, 80s, 90s and straight into 2000 with the radio stations, with this wake-up thing.
Yeah.
And we came up with this phrase called the intelligence transfer sequence, which was a wake-up call. It was a mechanism is a mechanism because it's running through the sky system, as I mentioned, I think in the past. And that's, I think, going to have a few problems for the BBC, but we'll see about that. The thing is that it's not something which gives you ideas. It's not something which tells you do this or do that, or you get a revelation. Oh, I must go out and do this or whatever. It's you. We, our individual selves, have to do the thinking.
Yes.
What it does is it subtly says, instead of having a mini metro out there, right? Or no, well, some of the new minis are actually quite powerful, but instead of having a little 1.2 litre runaround, you've got a V16, all singing, all dancing, Hydrox blasting machine, which can do everything, right? It can even drive in straight lines and go round corners.
That's right.
Right? So the whole challenge is that having been given these extra tools, which are your thoughts, your abilities, that you use them and focus on them positively and creatively.
Yes.
If you don't, then having been given that opportunity, and you don't make use of it, that particular civilization so exposed is then, well, that's it, you've been given your chance.
Yeah.
So we now have to grab this chance. We have to really go for this and to survive. Right. If we don't do that, we're not going to survive.
Survive.
It'll be, yeah. And in some respects, possibly that's maybe why we're here.
Yes.
We are being given opportunities in a corporeal body, which will experience and have all kinds of emotions and things which go with that, which you don't have when you are dead. Dead means dead. But the body here, I think something which a lot of people sort of say, oh, we've only got these skin bags, these water bag type bodies. Well, there's an awful lot of effort gone into doing this.
Yes.
And we're living in a multidimensional environment.
Yes. Where
the standing stones, the energy grid are telling us that our ancestors knew a hell of a lot more than we know now.
Yes.
But okay, having recognized that and having understood that, let's motivate, let's teach, let's explain, let's move rapidly on and get ourselves properly educated and trained into the wonderful world which we live in before we, through our inaction, allow it to be destroyed.
That's right.
And so we have to ask the scientific community, instead of having dogma and mind control within the scientific community, that our children are able to push this knowledge through and clear this log jam of dogmatic so-called science, the giggling child type professors and certain people we have on the media, off the scale and move on.
Yes. It's so important because we're being given the tools from the other side. Our minds are powerful. We were just told, oh, but you're nothing, you're nobody, or, No, that is not true.
Well, the reason why they're doing that is because they don't want us to wake up, because we do have the power, we do have this ability. And by in a world full of free will, they're using our compliance of accepting we can't do anything. By doing that, we are giving them the armament that we're giving the enemy. We're giving the enemy all the tools they need.
That's right.
By doing it ourselves.
I know.
By not acting on these things.
I know.
So we have to have a wake-up call, and we have to wake up, actively focus, create, do positive things. And that's why I would like to engage with contact with Sasquatch type beings and the Jinn and the other entities and beings, because it is my conclusion, after 20 years of the Basis Project, I'm going to come up with some kind of conclusions. I just can't just keep on just recording all this stuff. That we have to take action and stop this genocidal destruction of the reality, this wonderful Garden of Eden that we exist in.
That they are destroying every day. Look at the skies. Look at the chemtrails. Yesterday was particularly bad. Our governments are doing this to us. And what are we doing?
We're letting it happen.
Yes.
So we have to hold the relevant authorities. We have to hold the intelligence agencies, the relevant people who are in authority. We have to push them, ask them. These people are paid big money.
That's right.
They're given great responsibility, and they're doing things in our name. Well, we must ask them, what are you doing in our name? Why are you doing this in our name? Why are we having these little play wars that are going on? We've been going into trying to have a war with Syria, Iran, because the banking system's so corrupt. We've got to blame some other guy so that they can get away with having stolen our riches and resources, enslaved everybody into debt and poverty. So we've got to push these questions and not let them get away without getting proper answers.
I know.
And if they're not able to give answers, then put somebody in charge who can give us answers.
Exactly.
So that responsibility, power comes with responsibility comes with power. So these beings, these non-human entities which infest human bodies are
Yes.
essentially hounded out and pushed aside so that the wonderful life that we have on this planet can flourish
Yes.
and become wonderful and reach their full potentials.
I know.
But having said that, this so-called fifth race, and you can give anybody a name, and names are dangerous things because they come up with preconceptions. If they actually are smarter, and if they are able to do what they are planning to do and have planned to do for so long, then do we deserve to exist in the first place? So,
Yes.
you know, it's this idea that we don't have a predator, this idea that we can sit on our arse all day long and do nothing, is not a viable option.
I know. Well, when Monty died, he explained, just because somebody looks like you does not mean they are like you. There are people who appear to be like us. They don't have empathy. They don't understand love. And actually...
They have no heart.
No heart at all. No. No. They can kill without giving it a second thought. And this is something we are not capable of.
Well, this is a weapon that they're using.
Yes.
They're using our empathy. They're using
Yes.
our feelings
Yes.
of love and consideration.
Yes.
They're using that against us.
Very much so.
But we have a problem there. Are we to become the same cold-hearted killers
No.
that they are?
No, no.
So this
no.
is a problem.
The thing is, when we did, on the 2nd of February, when we decided to remove the dark energies from the Tor, for the first time, over 60-odd countries worked with me on it. Now, when have you ever seen all these nationalities come together to work for the good of humanity? This is the first time people are coming and working together.
It's interesting that it's just before we started to do this third interview,
Yes.
we had a call from a very good friend of mine in a European country,
Yes.
who was very keen to thank the kind of work that you had been doing about the response from her country was very positive. You had a big response on that.
I know the country you're talking about. It was amazing. It was inspiring. It really was. It's as if so many of them understood instantly what needed to be done, and they didn't hesitate to do it. One in particular, there's a lady called Hilda in that country. My God, she's amazing. Absolutely amazing. Now, she came to England to go on the tour.
With some people with our accent might confuse the audience that a tour is a tour in a tour bus.
No.
We're talking about Glastonbury Tor.
We're talking
aren't
about
we?
Glastonbury Tor.
Yes, let's get that across.
Now, they were driving towards it, and a car from nowhere crashed into them. Now, she's a powerful lady. Couldn't understand how this accident happened. They were hurt, so they couldn't go. They couldn't complete the journey.
Whereabouts did that happen?
She did tell me exactly, but I don't remember, but I can find out.
I'm not sure if that's relevant, but it's just interesting.
It's very interesting. She was shocked. So she physically, and then she had a phone call to say her father had been rushed into hospital and she had to get back to that country. He did die, unfortunately. But
did she go back? Because that would have been a distraction.
Because of the accident, she was hurt and the car was hurt and her partner was hurt, so...
Yes, it was a sufficiently bad accident.
Yes, it was.
Well, have
So
you been
she
able to
knows that she was prevented from going there.
Well, I think this illustrates again that we're not dealing with some kind of cloud cuckoo land
No,
wish
we're not.
list of fuddy-duddy
No, we're
stuff, where we are dealing with a bunch of really silly, disillusioned, people with something wrong in the head.
Yeah.
This is real. We have got, only just before I came here, I got an email referring to on a certain television program run by a certain government organisation, that individual was boasting on how he had a cyborg implant and how he could then be recognised as a cyborg.
Mm-hmm.
The reason why they want to have cyborgs is so that the problem with this enemy, this so-called fifth race,
Mm-hmm.
is their basic problem now is that they've essentially shot themselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Or it's a bit like sitting on the wrong side of the branch while you're cutting the branch off
Yes.
the tree.
Yes.
They have got a problem where, having attacked, polluted, aspartamized us,
Yes.
zombified us
Yes.
as a living species across the planet, with all sorts of toxins and poisons and things.
Yes.
They've got a problem is that they could end up being reborn when they come back into some of these toxified bodies. So their solution to this problem is remove all the other bodies, remove all the other populations, so there's nothing left except the correct body forms that they require to come back to.
Mm-hmm.
They do not want to come back to a damaged species.
No.
Because they have literally shot themselves in the foot on this. Yeah. So while they're in the physical domain, they have the ability to action physical things in this physical world that we live in, which will destroy us.
Yes.
But when they come back, when they are reborn,
yeah.
they don't seem to have quite got, or they've lost the ability to control in their plan,
yeah.
the ability of which bodies they then choose to come back in.
Yes.
Because something has worked against them,
yes.
their own, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So this means that ultimately, in order for them to ensure their survival, they're going to have to kill the rest of the planet.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of a problem for the rest of us, because if that happens, none of us will ever get back, in the same way that the dinosaurs essentially don't exist anymore, although some people feel that they exist in specialized blood groups which are within with the population.
Yeah. But we're being given the tools to prevent all this.
Well, we're given the tools, so we've got to make sure.
We're being told about the ley lines.
Yes.
To work with the ley lines and to work with the obelisks. That is so important. We can do it in our own homes. All you need is your mind. Meditate or
But
concentrate.
in what way do you make sure your mind is properly attuned and properly exercised? Because a lot of people's minds have been shut down with this mind control. This information here is so shocking, where they can access everybody's mind like an IP address or a computer address. I mean, this is a laptop.
I know.
It can be accessed remotely. So how do you ensure that the mind is clear enough to work on that level?
We have got to help each other. We have got to support each other. I know I experienced something in the last couple of weeks which I told you about. First of all, a very dear friend told me he'd almost committed suicide twice. And I said, don't be ridiculous. You're much too strong. You know, he would have been the last person I would ever have associated suicide with.
Well, this again goes back to my point that there's an active program now to take us out.
I know. Then, on the Monday before last, I experienced the darkest day of my life. Now, when I lost Monty, I thought, my God, nothing could be worse than that. But that Monday was beyond description.
That's a pretty serious thing, Veronica. I mean, to lose your husband is a horrendous thing, but if you're saying this experience was worse...
It was worse. I can honestly say it was worse.
What exactly happened? What did you feel so that others would be able to counter this?
It was like I was in a cloud, in a black cloud. And I wanted to give up on everything. Now, you know me. I don't do that. I don't do giving up. But on that day, I would gladly have ended everything. I would gladly have walked away from everything to escape the pain of what they were doing to me. And
what was this? Can you go through that?
Oh, Jesus.
One of the things they talk about here is synthetic telepathy, the ability to tune into people's individual thought patterns and attack them.
Somebody was attacking me. And
were you just talking to good old black magic?
Oh, total.
Psi attack?
Total. Everyone I tried to ring, Chris will tell you. I left so many messages on his mobile. He rang me the next morning and he said, what was wrong? I didn't get back till very late, so I didn't call you. Everyone I tried to call, I couldn't get. I was isolated. I have never felt so alone.
Well, this is something which you're actually talking about here. It's called synthetic dimensions.
Yeah.
The secret military complex has created and uses what amounts to synthetic dimensions. They use these in quantum jumping and in other operations. What is a synthetic dimension? A man-made separate time-space bubble outside our linear space-time. Through quantum jumping, a person can be teleported to a location. I mean, it's not quite what you're saying, but the state-of-the-art remote neural monitoring and synthetic telepathy operations take place in a synthetic dimension too, in a separate space-time, a time add. This is important, that phrase time-space as opposed to space-time. Time-space is used, which is typically 2 to 5 minutes ahead of what the subject experiences as normal linear time. Now, the interesting thing about that is I've noticed that there can be a time lag. If you can outthink the attacker, you've got a roughly there is a gap where if you're able, when you're under attack, to out strategy and outthink the attacker, you can send the attack back to them.
Yes. Now, mine was on the Monday. On the Friday, another friend, a really strong man and a really powerful individual, he had it. But you see, I had told him about mine. So when it was happening to him, he realized what was happening. And he was able to fight it. Whereas when it happened to me, I didn't have a clue what was happening.
Yeah, I think this is very important, because when you're in despair like that, you feel you're on your own.
Totally.
The point is you're not.
I know.
And you can fight back.
Yes. Now that's why when on the next Sunday when Monty was writing with me, we wrote about this so that people around the world would know this was done to you. This was not from within you. You would be amazed at the number of replies I got. People in America, Australia, Brazil, didn't matter where they were. They had all gone through it. One lady said she was staying in a hotel in New York on the 9th floor, and she had to physically stop herself from jumping out.
Well, that's what happened to Marie Kayali's daughter.
Yeah.
She got a signal.
Yeah.
Jumped out the window.
I have so many emails. And my friend who wanted to go to the highest building in London and jump off. Now he's a dead sensible fella.
Yeah.
And I didn't believe him when he told me, because he's the last person in the world.
Well, this is the thing I call about mind hacking.
Yes.
Dr. Robert Duncan has written a couple of books on all this called Soul Catcher 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And he spoke at the Super Soldier Summit last year. But this is also a thing that was done at the British Telecom referred to in the late 1990s about the Soul Catcher program. This kind of synthetic telepathy override is something which you've got to fight against. You know it's something that you want to actually deal with. Yeah. I'm actually being blocked from saying what I wanted to say there, But I've remembered again. Now, the thing about it is this again is real, and it's in our broadcasting organisations. There's some evidence that the BBC is operating with jinn, that they're actively engaged in rituals of some nature, which are actively harnessing jinn entities to do work from them. And it's possibly this black energy which poured out of certain BBC transmitters, which I've talked about in the past, may be related to that. It's also a reason why anybody who works at the BBC is a drained, grey, energy-sucked people. And this isn't against anybody working at the BBC. This is to alert people within those types of organisations that there's something really, really bad going on, and maybe they'll be able to do something about it, and get rid of these so-called blue meanies, to use a phrase from the Beatles' Yellow Submarine thing. But the point is that I took a series of photographs of painted artwork that was done at Sky Television in June 2009. Now, these paintings are on my website, the basisproject.org, in the Mind Hack section. Now, what was happening there was that people were being asked to paint just paint anything that comes into your head, and paint on a white bathroom tile with some colour, your lovely paint, and just paint whatever you like. By looking at these paintings, you're dealing with multi-tentacled spider-type entities coming through with big eyes.
That's right.
There's various... in fact, the opening scene on The Simpsons, where they all jump down and sit down and look at the TV, it's a mind control trigger. And all sorts of other entities with eyes and squiggly tentacles. And these are all through these various paintings.
That's right.
Which means that somebody was using those paintings as a mechanism to determine how successful they'd mind hack the staff at Sky Television. Now, I knew that something was going on. I thought, and that's why I took the pictures. I noticed there's something very wrong here. So I tried to override that. I'm going to paint whatever I want to paint, but I still painted something which had the same control triggers in there. Which means that when you are under a state of control or mind control, your own thoughts aren't necessarily what you think are yours.
That's right.
But there is this time delay. You can have, if you can push your thoughts ahead enough, push your intention ahead enough, you can get enough time to maneuver. It's a little bit like when you outrun a predator. You get yourself enough of a maneuverable position so you can turn around and kill the predator.
That's right.
Or give them one hell of a headache that they would wish they would never ever do it again. So what we need to do is collectively wake up, get enough maneuvering ability by whatever strategies are required, and kick these people where it hurts most, in the entity's mind or head, or give the computer a do loop so it wastes its own time and basically wipes itself out. Whatever this artificial intelligence is.
Well, you know, our greatest weapon against them is love. Send them love. They can't handle it.
No, that's very important, because one of the things which another phrase is here, a functional lobotomy, a very pleasant functional lobotomy. It's like a very blank, placid mind and consciousness. This is something which is emerging. This document's available at my website, the basisproject.org, but it was released and it is available elsewhere on the internet. It relates a whole lot of things that we're talking about. But there's 20 pages of this, so we've got to really get our heads around this. Just while I was thinking there, we're getting some backscatter feedback from British military that they were operating some kind of time travel type experiments in Rudloe Manor in the early 1960s.
Yes.
And this is connecting with some of the people who've been put to jail in the United States,
Yeah.
who'd been getting some oblique references and information out. With this kind of subject, it's often not the direct statement that's the thing that's needed to be looked at. It's the oblique 90-degree lateral.
Yes.
And that may in fact bounce off a couple of things for you to then get the actual meaning, because it's too dangerous to state the obvious. You've got to get the oblique triggers, which will, so you've got to have a certain level of oblique side thinking involved with this kind of subject.
Yeah.
So for instance, you would need to find out what the open space is, and that's where the hidden problem is, and then maybe reflect off that. So you have to reflect off something which isn't there to get the answer which is there.
Yes.
And those are sort of leaps through multidimensional thinking in that regard.
Yes. We are being given the tools. We've got to use them. We have not got the time to waste.
We have to create the time.
Yes. We've no choice.
Well, the data that we're getting is that we now have got access to a toolbox, which we shouldn't have access to for thousands and thousands of years. Point is, we now have access to it, and so we've got to try and construct and use those tools safely for us to survive. We don't want to end up creating, as it is possible, happened in the 1930s with the Thule Society and with the channelers in the 1930s, that they were given information, the Germans were given information, which ultimately has led to a Trojan horse.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that if you are a tribe of Stone Age people, and you're given the access to build yourself a Ferrari, and and you put the gasoline in when you should, where you put the water, and you put the water in, you got to know what you're doing with something like this.
Yes.
So you've got to have those safeguards. Now, what we understand is that those safeguards are only applicable when you get all 6 of these devices together.
Yes.
But once you have all 6 of these devices together, it's who's going to be the people who's going to be controlling it. So we've got to use an awful lot of that kind of thinking that I referred to earlier, to make sure that when we do get access to these tools, that we can use them safely.
Yes.
And when we end up pushing a button a lot and nothing seems to be happening, it may not be happening here.
Yes.
But some guy down at the bottom end of the street's got his television going on and off all the time, and he wants to know why is this happening. Well, it's because you're at the other end of the street switching off his electricity. I'm using it as a very bad metaphor. Yes. So we have to understand first that when we start operating nuclear weapons, it may be creating a big bang here, but it may be doing something even worse elsewhere.
Exactly.
Well, Veronica,
yes, dear.
Not everybody, I know this is going to come as a bit of a shock to you, Veronica, but not everybody has watched all 20 years worth of the Basis series in one go, or even in bits and drabs.
Yes.
John Irwin is a gentleman who came to me when I was being interviewed at Richard D. Hall.
Yes.
Richard D. Hall's another great researcher in this field.
He has stayed here.
Yes, he stayed here as well.
Yes, he's lovely. Yeah. Very nice fellow. Yeah.
There was a guy sitting in the back of the studio who just happened to be paying a little bit of attention to what I was saying. And I was talking about Barry King, about the underground bases in Peasmore, and the creation of programmable generated life forms that had happened in the English countryside around Berkshire and Wiltshire since World War II. And he was very interested to see what I was saying. So he gave me a card, and I gave him a call. And he then started telling me certain stories about his military career in the 1950s. And cutting very long story short, John Irwin was induced into a secret military team called the 16.
That's right.
And this secret military force operated in the Middle East in the 1950s, but was not a British military operation.
Yeah.
They simply used the cover
Yes.
of the British military to do their work.
Yeah.
In the military, you are given orders, and nobody questions those orders. You do what those orders say, and that's it. No questions asked. So when you're given orders, and those orders involve that you then meet with other individuals who have got strange qualities,
Yes.
and were able to train John Irwin in a strange, very unique form of combat.
I know about that, yes.
And John went on a number, he was a junior member of this team. Several of his new recruit people he was one of a number of people brought in. Not all of them survived.
No.
Some of them burst into flames when they went through certain procedures.
Yeah.
Bit like spontaneous combustion.
Combustion, yeah.
He then was involved with a series of very daring raids and very daring escapades in the Middle East in the 1950s. And the final one was the recovery of 2 data banks, which has knowledge and information from the ancients,
That's right.
which was discovered during the middle of the 20th century.
Yes.
And that's what John Irwin's about.
Yeah.
What's happened is that Irwin has now been instructed to tell certain information so that we can survive, because
Yes.
things are gathering pace. The kind of technology that was used by the elite to take out the Twin Towers,
Yes.
the kind of technologies that's been used to control the weather, which I've been seeing. This kind of technology and other forms of technology which allows them to directly access people's minds with synthetic telepathy, identify people in a crowd of maybe 1,000 people.
Yes.
It'll be that one on the left-hand side beside there. They can target that individual.
Yes. I know.
The major internet companies are developing all these kinds of technologies to completely know what you're thinking.
That's right.
And last week, this was driven home to me personally, because I got a text message or an advertisement came up on my phone, which was absolutely unique to me and actually applied to what my frame of mind was at the time.
Really?
It was way above coincidence. The only way that that particular commercial would have had any significance was only based on what I was individually thinking at that time, which means that they were able to remote neurally monitor what I was thinking, and just to let me know, hello Miles, that commercial came up on my phone.
My God.
So that's the kind of technology that the Google mind mapping and all this sort of stuff that's being used by these internet conglomerates to literally mind hack. It's been used, or it's been sold to us as a means of providing our every need.
Of course. We're helping you.
We're helping you, yes. Well, Veronica, in 20 years of the Basis Project, we've had a lot of exposure to outrageous stories which are beyond science fiction.
I know.
What I'm saying is to wake up and smell the coffee, in that this is not a science fiction. There are exceptional technologies which the elite have got hold of. We have to become educated, empowered, and fight for our survival. We have a predator that is going to wipe us all out.
Yes.
Everything. Yes. Every blade of grass, all life is going to be wiped out.
I know.
We must act immediately with urgency. The relevant powers that be must decide if they are going to survive themselves. We have the first degrees, the second degrees, and the third degrees.
That's
in
right.
that we have the actual elite criminal.
Yes.
Well, they're not criminals as such. They are here, whatever brought them here, and they are going through a strategy for them to survive and everything else to be wiped out.
That's right.
that's what nature is all about, but they're going to destroy nature itself so they can exist themselves. And for what I understand, they are then going to use our relevant DNAs
Yes.
between all the species and go back to the sister and mother planets and civilizations
Yeah.
where we've collectively been taken from or
Yeah.
brought from, and take them out as well.
Mm-hmm.
This is about the obliteration, effectively,
Yeah.
of all known life in the universe.
That's right.
And the multiple universes, so that this particular life form, whatever it is, will survive over everything else.
Mm-hmm.
I am saying that if we're going to survive ourselves, we have to fight for our survival and do so with immediate effect. Otherwise, we will not survive the next 3 or 4, well, maybe 4 or 5 generations, whatever it is.
That's right.
And that will be it.
Yes.
There will be no coming back. We will not be able to reincarnate. We will be finished,
That's
dead.
right.
The end of our existence
Yes.
will happen.
We have to take control. We are as Monty reminds me, we're the 99%. Only 1% is trying to destroy us. Now, does that make sense to you?
1% is not trying to destroy us. 1%
Is
is using
destroying.
ourselves to destroy ourselves.
Exactly. These people who are involved in flying the planes that bombard us with all these chemicals, the chemtrails, how can they live with themselves?
They don't have a heart, and they're doing what every species would do. They're dominant. They're becoming dominant.
Yeah.
And they're using they're doing it with the minimum resources.
Yeah.
There's not too many of them.
I know.
They're getting us to do it to ourselves.
I know.
And this was demonstrated to me by one of the people I interviewed, called Alistair. And he explained how in nature there are small creatures, small insects or other
Yeah.
creatures will get the larger creature to literally walk to the nest to be eaten.
Oh, God.
No big fight, no big, they'll inject a hormone or they'll inject some kind of chemical which takes that creature, in this particular case a cockroach, a much larger, much more able creature, and the cockroach was literally just be taken along to the nest to be infused with eggs and eaten.
I know.
So this is in nature. This is not an abnormality. It's the way the cookie is crumbling. And at the moment, our cookie is going to crumble and we're not going to be around too much longer.
Yes. Miles, please tell us about your conference, because a lot of us are interested, because you're bringing forward information we need to know.
Well, after 20 years, I thought it's probably a good time, as a pathetically thinly veiled excuse, to have a conference.
Yes.
So what I've also recognised is an awful lot of the stuff I've been dealing with is really bloody awful, oh my God kind of stuff.
I know.
But at a conference, you don't necessarily want to hear, oh my God, we're going to die kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm also very reticent to have, I'm the person with all the knowledge, you down there will be received in the same way that we do like in a church service.
Yeah, no thanks.
I want a much more empathic and cooperative and positive exchange of information and knowledge. I want to highlight that our ancestors knew all about the hyperdimensional, multiple, wonderful information from our past.
Yeah.
And so we're holding it in Marlborough College, which is in the middle of Wiltshire.
Yeah.
Maybe it'll be in the summertime. It'll be in the summertime, 8th, 9th and 10th of August in the Ellis Theatre in Marlborough College. And we'll be able to get tickets from the Basis Project website. It's simply thebasisproject.org.
Yes.
And there's in the event section there, there'll be you can buy tickets for the Friday. We'll be starting at Friday at 6 o'clock with a radio show with Sarah Goodley. and the idea is to engage some of the people that are there. We're going to have the ability of people who've been on the bases. Anybody who's appeared on the bases or a MASH project gets in for half price.
My goodness.
And we might even have some T-shirts. Who knows? Maybe as good as this one from the UFO Congress.
Yes.
But this is about the only good one they've actually made. Much better design.
Very nice.
So the idea then is to get people together. They'll have nice long lunch breaks so we can have people can get together and talk. Yeah. We're going to have a brilliant night watch with night goggles and stuff like that near Knapp Hill, which is in the Pewsey Valley. And we'll be meeting at the Barge pub, hopefully, at that time, on the Friday the 8th of August, after the radio show. We're going to have some of the MASH witnesses who I filmed, anybody I filmed basically, who's been on camera, can get in for half price, and any individuals who are part of that, who want to update the audience with what's going on with their lives or their particular case, we'll be giving them an opportunity in a section called Basis Update. And then we're going to have Mary Rodwell, the star speaker. We're going to give her 3 hours to speak about the new children, and we're going to have David Griffin talking about the black goo. He's been doing an awful lot of work on that.
People need to know about the black goo.
He did the initial work on the Falklands War, which the British were getting that as a trophy of war. The black goo came from that source, and there's going to be a major update on that. And who knows what's going to happen between now and August. So, Veronica, thank you for having me on again. I hope that I've been able to provide some good stuff.
It's always a pleasure, my dear. Always a pleasure.
And I don't want to scare people, but we've got a scary situation, and we've got to deal with it. And I don't want to be too dark about this, but survival is a pretty important issue. Yes. And I think the information that has been revealed in the Basis Project in the last 20 years and the surrounding information that others have come up with in those 20 years, it's very clear. We've got to either decide to live or die.
Yeah. And I think we have chosen. We have made our decision, haven't we? And let's encourage everybody else to do the same.